Okay, hi everybody. We are live again. Welcome to our Facebook CX live series. And tonight we have with us Jim Tincher. Jim was actually on our podcast. His episode hasn't been released as yet, so you're getting a sneak peek into what you're going to actually hear from him in the podcast. He's a nationally recognized customer experience thought leader, journey mapping expert, keynote speaker, and author. Jim led customer experience programs at Buy and United HealthGroup before launching his innovative CX consultancy, Heart of the Customer. And I mean, he loves it so much. He has it in his background. It's so beautiful. I love his background so much. He helps startups to Fortune 50 organizations use voice of the customer to research and improve loyalty and boost revenue. His book, which I strongly recommend, whether you listen to this episode live or you listen to it after, it's been posted on Facebook, that you grab it. It's called How Hard Is It to Be Your Customer? And it's considered to be a must-read book for customer experience focused leaders. And LiveHelpNow, SupportBee, influencer marketing, CustomerThink, or Feedspot, and LitmusWorld have all named it an excellent book to read. And of course, Jim, our great influencer, customer experience influencer for you to follow. So without further delay, welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Nate, to be here. I look forward to tonight.
Excellent. Okay, so Jim, share with us now. I've been promoting and saying I'm bringing on a customer journey mapping expert. Let's talk about customer journey mapping. What is that? Like, if somebody was listening to this and they've never heard of that term before, what would be the easiest and simplest way to bring that across to them?
I'd say it's a visual representation of the experience your customers have with you. The best maps really help you understand quickly the ups and downs experience, the moments of truth, the friction points, moments of delight in a compelling manner.
All right. And so when you're doing a journey map, how many persons need to be involved? Who are the key stakeholders? Who is the most important person to involve in putting that together?
Well, we did some research. We found actually that's one of the most important questions, which is who's on the team involved in journey mapping. And it's typically a pretty broad team. In fact, we found that's the number one factor, is a broad cross-functional team. So in our experience, it varies a little bit by what the journey is, but typically involves 20 to 30 people throughout the organization. You need the usual suspects. Let's say, for example, it's an onboarding a new customer journey. Well, you'll need customer service there. You'll probably want marketing. You'll want your post-sales people. But what some people don't think about is, for example, IT. It blew me away that 70% of the people who are doing journey mapping, according to our research, don't involve the technical folks as part of the journey mapping. Now, I get it. I used to be in IT as well, and nobody wants to invite us to a party. So I get that. But you'll save so much time by involving them up front, because they will be involved in your implementations. Or the one that I wish it surprised me, it doesn't, was that 93% of people don't involve human resources or HR.
Really?
Now, a number of HR groups, they are about compliance, and I don't want them there either, but not 93% of them. And if you're going to get the most out of your journey experience, you want to change the culture. And so you need to involve people who are really the ones who are making that culture happen. And in many organizations, that is HR. And so you absolutely need them as part of your overall work.
All right. Now, how does a journey map help an organization? How does it help a business achieve customer loyalty and satisfaction?
Well, a couple of different ways. First of all, by basing it on the actual voice of the customer. The journey mapping is not a conference room activity. It's a contact sport. Get out there, talk to your customers. Now, clearly right now that's virtually. Normally we bring our clients out to meet their customers firsthand. And for many, it's the first time they've actually been on a customer site. But you need to get there, first of all, involve that voice of the customer. And then really from there, it's start to think about what is that journey you want to map? What is important to have there? Some groups like to do the overall journey. Others like to focus on a specific problem. And we can talk about why to choose one or the other. But the first thing is involve the voice of the customer, involve a broad team, and then really use that to understand what's happening in that customer experience working with you, and use that then to graphically display it And so we have, for example, I'm going to pull one off. One we use here, which you can see it's not as bright, but you see the different moments across the way, and you see the pain. So you need somebody as well to visualize that. It's called the visual superiority effect, and that's a highly visual artifact. It'll be easier to remember and easier to understand than what mini journey maps are, which are glorified Excel documents.
Glorified Excel documents. Okay, so you said we need to involve HR. We need to ensure that we get the voice of the customer. And it's important to ensure it's. So one of the things that we're trying to get at is, how is it going to help you achieve customer satisfaction? Is it that the customer is going to tell us what they want, and then we're going to redesign our customer experience to deliver that for them? And I want you to give us a real example, like something very simple. Let's say, for example, I'm a customer and I say, I would prefer if you guys stopped having us sign up forms. Why can't you create an app and I can just, fill out the form through the app, or you collect my data through the app instead of me having to fill out a form? If I get enough feedback from my customers where that is concerned, do I go back to the drawing board and create an app and forget about the paper collection?
Well, it comes back to one of the things we see when groups go wrong is that they overreact to one tiny piece of feedback. Odds are in that situation, that frustration of the form is actually predictive or illustrative of a bigger problem. That likely that the process is slow, convoluted, and manual. That's what we often see. For example, we worked with a life insurance company, and that was the case right there, where the symptom was the form, but the real problem is that overall it was just too hard to buy from them. A lot of manual steps, a lot of handoffs, and as a result, the customer's getting lost. So the first thing as a business to do is understand, what's that problem I'm trying to solve? It's typically a place at the intersection with a customer problem and a business problem. Now, I love reacting to every customer complaint and trying to fix that, but nobody has an unlimited budget. And we find, as a lot of organizations don't do right, is they don't start with a business problem that's reflected by customer pain. You want to find that intersection.
Gotcha.
So in that case, what I do first, if I'm out there at that, we use the insurance company example, I want to say, okay, what organizationally and customer problems are caused by that? And likely in that situation, I'd look for data that shows we're losing customers along the way. That manual process is just driving nuts. And so if we start with 100 customers, maybe we end with 50, obviously making up that data. So we're losing half our customers. Now you have a business problem. You can engage executives and say, look at this pain we're causing customers is actually causing us pain as well. First thing is to rally around that, get that business problem there. Great. The next thing then is to figure out what's the right journey reflected that business pain. So it could be simply just looking at that form, but more likely we want to get the points before and after that and look at the journey from the customer's lens. In this case, the journey probably begins when they meet with a financial professional and say, I'd like insurance, and ends when they get that they get the insurance completed. So we have to look at it through the customer's eyes and use that to understand both before and after, because that gives you usually really important clues to what's happening in the journey.
Right. And that's why it's so important to involve the customer, right? Because you're not going to know unless you involve the customer.
So actually the first third of our book is just walking through these things. So number one is a business problem. Number two, it's the right journey. Number three is who's the customer. It may not be every customer. In fact, often it isn't. So look for that. Then number four is figure out the right way to collect the voice of the customer. We talked beforehand, focus groups are terrible. Not that they're terrible in terms of research, but a journey is individual. And a journey, you want to be there as the journey happens. If I ask you about what it was like to buy the life insurance when you're done, you'll give me answers. But the answers you give me, they actually won't be accurate. Daniel Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winning author. He won the Nobel Prize in economics, but he's a psychologist. He wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow. And he was able to show us how your memory of an experience is disproportionately impacted by the peak point of pain or pleasure and the ending. So if I ask you about what it was like afterwards, you'll give me answers, but they're highly biased by what happened during the journey. So in that situation, the right method for us to get the voice of the customer is first talk to people who have finished the journey. Because all you're really doing in customer experience, is designing memories. So we want to understand what those memories are, but then come back and talk to another set of people who are going through the journey as it happens. If it's a shorter journey, let's say up to a month, we all use a digital ethnography, which is a platform. It could be on your computer, it could be on your phone, for you to tell us what's happening as it happens, but you want people as it's going on, and get that as you go. Then the last question, which is actually most important, is who's on the team. But you usually can't answer that until you figured out what's the business problem, who's the customer, what's the journey, and then you can answer that last part. But those 5 questions are really critical. And not using those questions is the reason why 2/3 of journey maps fail to drive any action at a company.
And how do you know who is the customer you should be focused on? Would that be driven from the problem, the business problem?
Exactly. It might not be every customer. Millennials, everybody wants to learn about millennials. That's one, or a specific market. We worked with a number of companies who had gone through an acquisition, usually 2 years earlier, and now they're starting to lose the customers that came to the acquired company. So we'll talk specifically to that set of customers. We typically say, if you're going to look at an end-to-end journey, the overall from awareness through purchase, through renewal, all that, that's pretty broad. So you want to go with a very specific type of customer. Or if you're going to go with all customers, then you probably want to go with a very narrow journey. One of the phrases that kept coming up when we talked to practitioners is, I didn't want to boil the ocean. Our CTO, that phrase drives him nuts because it shows up all the time. I want to boil the ocean. But it's true. That's why it shows up. Both the best memes are there for a reason, and the best cliches, and that's true, because when you try going too broad, you can't change everything. And that's part of the reason why you fail.
So you have to be very granular, very specific about what it is that you're working with. And it's almost like you're working your way from the inside out, changing what needs to be changed as you go along.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
You start with that. You start with the executive, start with the business problem. Then you bring in the customers to help go after that.
Good. All right. So now digital is here to stay, right, Jim? And many businesses are still struggling with a multi-channel approach versus an omni-channel approach. Can you share with us why this is important? But before you even get into why it's important, could you distinguish for us what is omni-channel versus multi-channel?
Well, I'll give you my interpretation of that, which is multi-channel simply means you have a lot of channels. Omni-channel means that they actually talk. And that's difficult. What we find, especially COVID, has really driven everybody to focus on digital. I was at a customer experience event a couple of weeks ago where Target was there speaking. And they said what were their 2030 goals are now their 2020 goals in terms of digital adoption. It's just accelerated everything so quickly. And we find a lot of organizations have built their journeys in an analog manner. That it involves person A, who then has off person B, who goes to person C, goes to person D. And that was broken beforehand. But that is almost by definition impossible to make omnichannel because it's so analog. And even if you're in some area where digital is not important today, tell me who that is, because I don't know who that is. But if you're that person, you still want to digitize the journey because it makes it more consistent. One of the things that we find that the best customer experience people are doing, and it's a small set, is they're digging into the data. And they're not just relying on survey scores. They're using the data to tell them how the journey's going so they can see where customers are dropping off. If we go back to that example of purchasing life insurance, they can say, okay, if 100 come in, where are we losing them along the way? And they're using that to show success. The survey is not the score. The survey is used to help diagnose the problems. It's really about the data, because here's the thing. Your CEO may say that he or she cares about your survey scores, and she probably does, but she spends way more time talking to the CFO, and your CFO could not care less about your survey scores. They really don't care. In fact, I'll interview for our next book. We're interviewing a few CFOs, and they're confused. Like, well, why do I care about surveys? Well, exactly. What do you care about? Because that is who your CEO is listening to. And if you can't convince your CFO that customer experience is important, you have no chance of getting forward to the CEO. But if you can take the time to get finance on your side, and it's very doable, then your CEO is going to adopt it wholeheartedly.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So you said omnichannel is where the channels talk to each other, and multi-channel is you just having a bunch of channels, right? When it comes to customer experience, you were mentioning life insurance, and at the different stages, where does a person drop off? Let's say, like for example, in Jamaica, one of the greatest challenges that I find, especially as you mentioned, insurance, is they're pretty good at getting you to buy the insurance, but you don't really hear from them after that. So, I've had many cases where I've had an insurance agent and I didn't even know that he or she left the company until a situation has come up and I need to call them now, and I pick up the phone and call, and I'm being told, oh, we don't have anybody here that works there. And then I finally find out, oh, I have a new representative that's assigned to me, but I've never spoken to that person before and I don't know their name. And there was no handoff when the person who did sign me on was leaving the company to the new representative that would have now taken over my portfolio. How do you get people to do those things? How do you get them intrinsically committed to really being, committed to having customers on being a part of that journey? Like, what do we do?
Well, the first thing you need to do is hire one of my clients who won't do that to you. But you speak to a really big issue, which is culture change and creating a customer-focused culture. And that's what we're studying for our next book, is really understanding that so I don't know if you saw Harley Manning's prediction in December. Harley Manning's with Forrester, who predicted that 1 out of 4 customer experience people would lose their jobs this year because they're not showing business value. That was before coronavirus came out. He made that prediction. What fascinated me is the year before that, CustomerThink came out with research showing that 1 out of 4 programs can show business value. 3 out of 4 can't. So I like to study excellence. I want to know, what is it about that 1 in 4 that really shows business value that separates them so much from the 1 in 4 who are going to be fired?
Right.
What is it they're doing special? And so as a geek, I said, okay, then the way I'm going to figure this out is I'm going to interview people. My team has now interviewed 86 people, primarily in customer experience, some CFOs, some CEOs, some others around, but mostly in customer experience, to understand what does excellence look like. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that is thinking about culture change. That's a big part. Coming back to your question. Eventually, I'm going to get to your question. It just takes me a little while, but I'll get back to your question. So it's culture change, and it's keeping the customer focused. But we find is that similar to journey mapping, the first thing you want to do with culture change is give the culture a reason to change. Now, I'm a big fan of the ADKAR change management model from ProSign. And it talks about, if you want to get somebody to change, there's 5 things you want to do. We talked about this on your podcast. For those who've not heard it yet, well, I guess nobody has. I try to get Unique to move to Minnesota. So it's an uphill battle. It's a little bit easier right now in August than it will become January. But the 5 steps you need are, first of all, they need to become aware of the need to change. They have to desire to change. They have to know what to change. They have to be able to change. They have to be reinforced. So we go back to your scenario where your agent left the company. First of all, was the new agent aware that they should call you? Well, hopefully, but there are organizations where that's not even true, where they don't necessarily know who's in their book. But that's the first step. But often where it falls down is the second. Do they desire to call you? They may have looked at it and said, well, we've got Unique's business. Why do I need to worry about that? We've got her business. She's sending us a check every month. Let's go find some prospects instead. As the customer experience leader, It's your job to explain to that agent why they need to call you. Why is that important to do? Now, also then, okay, now they know how to call you. Probably they have that there. Are they able to call you? What we find happens a lot of times is that an agent comes on and they have 200 people they need to call. And I just can't get it done. There's not enough time in the day to get them all done. And so they may not be able to. Or you may have the case where the agent starts calling that list on day one, continues to listen day two, and then they get busy. They do other things. Does the organization reinforce the need to call customers, to be customer focused? So are they aware they need to be customer focused? Do they desire to be customer focused? Do they know how to be customer focused? Are they able to be customer focused? And is that customer focus reinforced? Are you reinforcing that need to focus on the customer? If you don't do all five, then you're never going to get your phone call.
Wow. That's terrible. I don't think they're doing that.
It doesn't sound like it. No.
Oh goodness. So those are some of the things that we need to focus to get a customer focused culture. You do a lot of work. Do you do work outside of the United States, Jim, or primarily in the US?
Primarily the U.S. We have done some work. Canada, we have a couple of global customers based in the U.S., but we've flown our team to China. I've spent time in Belgium, the Netherlands, sent somebody else down to not to Jamaica, but we've been to Brazil, other places. So we do a little bit.
Good. So I think you'd be in a good position because you sound like you have some global experience in terms of telling us, how do you see customer experience? Do you feel like in 2020, especially even since the pandemic, that customer experience, would you say, is top of mind for 70-60% of businesses globally? What's your perception on that?
Well, it varies a lot depending where you are as an organization, which varies across the country. So we can see, for example, in Europe, there's a lot of work being done. That the journey manager role originated in Europe, and a lot of focus there. I can tell you from our blog that most of our readers are in the US, as you'd expect, but quite a bit in England, Ireland, some in Europe. We do have some South American as well, but there's obviously a language barrier. And so we see less in the other regions. When I've talked to some people who are more involved globally, we find that it varies a lot more by organization than by market. And so more mature organizations have gotten there. You have a natural evolution inside of a company. When the company first begins, it's almost always customer obsessed because that's how they get going. That's how it begins. Sure. And then you start to, over time, start building operational processes, start building silos. And that's when you get to an inflection point. Some organizations decide we're going to focus on operations. That's what we're going to do. And customer experience can work there, but not as well. Others decide they're going to double down on the customer and customer experience. And so they may start out, they stop, they level off for a while, and then say, okay, we're going to double down, and they go up there. But there are organizations who decide that that's fluffy and that it's not the area to focus. And we've talked to these companies before. I know you have. I have. That unless you can show them a very solid business case, they're not going to listen. Here's the cool thing. You can create a dynamic business case out of customer experience. It just takes the time to tie into the business problem and the customer problem and find the data to make that connection.
And the dollar value. Because for every customer that you lose, there's some financial loss that's attached to that.
Oh, definitely. We came out with a white paper about 3 or 4 months ago on called CX for Skeptics, how to show ROI, 3 ways to show ROI. And the first way is what we all think about, which is when your survey scores go up, so do your business results.
Right.
Now, that works if you have a simple experience and or a whole bunch of surveys. Comcast can do this. They can tell you specifically when their net promoter score goes up, churn reduces, average customer lifetime value increases. But let's face it, Comcast is huge. Here in the States, they have literally millions of customers, millions of surveys. you can find a lot of correlation with a million surveys. Just don't have that. And so if you can get that, fantastic, because your CEO thinks it's there. But a lot of our clients, their experience is too complex. They can't make that connection. So, all right, we go next, and let's find specific types of revenue you can impact. For example, can you increase your share of wallet by 5%? Can you improve your order velocity? So let's say, Unique, you're at your favorite company. You're now been hired by this company. You're in charge of customer experience. And going into your third year, you say, last year, our sales grew by 10%. We know from the research that improved customer experience can drive up revenue by 10%. So, hey, sales and marketing, I'm taking that revenue claim. That was all customer experience. You guys, it's cute and all. Customer experience responsible for all of that revenue increase last year. How's that conversation going to go?
No, not very good.
No, not at all. But if you can say instead, we focused last year on our onboarding journey. We know it's broken from the customer research. We saw that our repurchase rate was fairly low for our new customers. So we went back and we redesigned the onboarding journey. As a result, those who went through the onboarding journey ordered an extra 0.8 products per month over the first 6 months of their relationship with us. That translates to $150,000 in new sales. That's a case you can make. By going more granular, we're not saying top line revenue. We're saying for this specific set of customers, we were able to have this impact on their buying behavior because of the work we did over here. That becomes believable. That will get your finance group excited. And if you can get a finance group excited, you can move mountains.
True. Very true. So those things are so critical just to get everybody on board. What are some of the industries that you see thriving? One of the things I read recently was that Amazon is everybody's competitor. Amazon has basically changed the expectations. So, we live here in Jamaica. We don't actually have a physical Amazon. And if we buy from Amazon, because we're not in the United States of America, we can't have a delivery person come directly to our door. So what we have to do is there's another part of the journey that's added on, which is we would have to subscribe to like an external mailing partner who has a PO box in Florida, and we ship the item to that PO box, and then that PO box person who is a Jamaican company and has multiple locations or outlets in Jamaica brings it in for us, and they deliver it to us at our doorstep, or we go to their location and pick it up depending on what option you select. And so it's almost like because Amazon has broken you, so they've spoiled you. They've spoiled you to believe that it's so easy, it's so simple. You literally believe that this is possible for other organizations. A lot of companies, when I talk to them and tell them that Amazon is their competition, they're like, no, we don't sell the same thing that Amazon sells. But it's almost like they're thinking one track, but your customers are not, because when your customers are comparing you, they're comparing you to businesses that are not even in the same industry that you are in.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, 100% right.
So
we work with, I mentioned earlier, a number of global companies, and a manufacturing client we have is global. They are getting up because they can't match Amazon's ease of use.
There we go.
I don't think any of their clients are ordering, 55-gallon drums of glue from Amazon. Very different case, but still, people want that same easy experience. So yeah, it's absolutely, Amazon is everybody's competitor.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree with you where that is concerned. And I think if more businesses started to think in that frame of mind, to say, how can we replicate the same kind of experience in our business to make it easy, make it simple, it would definitely make a difference in how their customers perceive them in comparison to their competitors. Because we all have competition.
Right.
I think every business has competition, no matter what industry you're in. And customers have choices. Like they literally can do and a lot of times when they choose you, they've done a lot of due diligence. It's not like back in the day where you watch a TV advertisement and it's because of what they say they can do. People do their research, they read testimonials, they call their friends and family, they ask questions, and it's after all of that due diligence that they've done that they make a decision and say, hey, I'm gonna call Jim because I spoke with Susie, and Susie's company is doing really well, and Jim has worked with her for years, and I'm going to use Heart of the Customer. And it's not based on an ad that she saw in a training magazine that Heart of the Customer had, or a webinar that Jim sat on talking about how great his company was, but it was based on another customer who is speaking of real value that Jim has brought to her company. So it's just like so important to get people to see that, you know, they have to not compare themselves to companies that are just doing what they're doing, but we're all literally competing in a global space, even though we're not in the same physical landscape.
Very true, very true. And what you're talking about earlier is also social proof is what we all look for in the buying process. Who are other people buying from? That's a big part of it. And that's one of the big ways that you do compete with an Amazon, with others, that if you can't match their digital presence, then you need to double down on social proof. Get your customers speaking on your behalf. Show that others, people who are like you, have done well with us is a very powerful way.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned social proof, Jim, and you said you should get the customers talking. What if your customers aren't talking voluntarily? How do you get them to give you that social proof?
Well, the first answer is not to throw in a loyalty program and pay them to do that. I mean, yes, that can work. There are a lot of organizations do that. Up here at Best Buy, I used to work there. I buy from them all the time because they have a great loyalty program. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. The way you want to do it is through really understanding what's in it for them. And so trying to profile them, trying to show why it's worthwhile. A lot of our clients will not let us use their names. That's just the rules of the road. We are contractually forbidden from using their names. And so I have to be a little bit more creative and use ways on LinkedIn so them it's in their interest that talk about us. And it comes back to that what's in it for them. And again, coming back to AdCar, they're probably aware that I'd like them to, you know, speak on my behalf. Do they desire to?
True.
How do you make it worthwhile to them? And that, again, not paying them, but helping them see that they're smart, helping profile them.
Mm-hmm. And then a big part of it, I think, too, as well, Jim, and I said this, and you can let me know if it's true. I find people only talk voluntarily about experiences that are really over the top, like, you know, wow, spontaneous, amazing, fantastic. It's really outside of, you know, what they expected. And they talk about the really bad stuff, the things that pain them, the things that cause them a lot of discomfort, the things that they extremely hated. And then the things in the middle that were just okay, those things don't get mentioned.
And that's the vast majority of experiences.
Yeah.
Most customer experiences are dull. There's no way around it. They're dull. And if you want somebody to talk about you, again, you've got to make them desire to do it. And that's through really, you can do it from surprise. Surprise and delight works sometimes. That depends on the industry. I used to work in the health savings account industry. Surprising and delighting with a health savings account, not easy. And so you want to figure out what does work for them. But often, ease is a good way of doing it. If you can make it really easy for your customers, that goes a long way. There's a bank here in the U.S., I can't say their name. I was talking with their customer experience lead. And they measure, as mentioned earlier, instead of going after overall revenue, their goal, their customer experience program, is to drive referrals. They want to make your experience so good that you will refer to somebody else. They asked 4 questions in their transactional survey. How likely are you to recommend us and why? And how simple was this experience and why? Now, if we lived in a rational world, how likely are you to recommend should tie very directly to what you actually refer them or not. Not what they found. That's all. What they found instead was the simpler the experience, the more likely people were to recommend. Simplicity is a key. As we get busier, both in our professional and our personal lives, if you can make it easy for a customer, that often will lead them to brag about you. But it's got to be really, really easy. And where one of the things to do as a customer experience leader is to understand that more and more options often are not the secret to making it simple. We always want to add more options. You want choice is good. You can read quite a bit of research that says choice is not good. If you ask me, I'll say, yes, I want a choice until the moment I have to make that choice. So one of the things we tell our clients is that people want choices. That doesn't mean they want to choose.
True.
And so clients want to know that they have choices there, but they also want to know that you've gone through those choices and you've come up with the right option for them. And so that's our recommendation to a lot of our clients is let them know that there are all these different options out there, but for you, this is the right one.
So you make it easier for them. For
Exactly.
real. That makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about the data, Jim. How can you use feedback collected from customers to drive your customer experience design? What kind of data do you need to focus on? A big part of what I've been reading recently is hyper-personalization. So we've moved from personalization now to hyper-personalization. You know, what are customers looking for in that whole process of hyper-personalization? What does that translate to? Is that you just calling me by name?
That's an entry level of personalization. And it comes back to how do we actually move along those choices? How do we make it easier for customers? And let's start first with the data, then let's go to the outcome. We find is the most effective customer experience programs, again, the survey is not the score, the survey is a diagnostic. What we find is they actually begin with behavioral data. Let's understand what customers are doing. Can I actually track where you as a customer are in the journey? Do I understand that behavioral data? Most customer experience programs can't, but those great ones can. They can track where you are in your journey. So if we go back to that life insurance purchase journey, I can tell where you are in that journey and if you got hung up. That's number one. Number two then is to bring in survey data, but tie it to that individual. We recommend, of course, you have your traditional relationship surveys, you have transactional surveys, as well as a journey survey to show where that person is in the journey. And then third, bring in the financial data. Even though you as a consumer don't care that I have your financial data, the executives are going to sign off on the changes due. And so I need to bring in the financial data as well so I can show the impact of when you get stuck in the journey, you have these scores that show that you're frustrated and use that to understand where you're frustrated. And that has this financial outcome for the organization. And so it's a combination of the behavioral and operational data, the survey or sentiment data, and the financial outcomes data. Gotcha.
So those are all the data sets that you need to consider in order to build on your customer experience design. Yeah.
Yep. And then where that comes in handy is then something I don't know if you spend any time with. We've started to see more interest in this is journey orchestration. And that is where you actually can set up automatically that you have interventions based on when somebody gets hung up in the journey. So going back to the life insurance example, I just like to use that to be consistent, but I've seen this in banking, other places as well, is that when we've gotten your paperwork all filled out and we tell you, you need to have an appointment here to get your blood work done. It's going to shock you. Some people don't do that. And what happens is that the organization is tracking that person just lingers. And nobody ever follows up and says, hey, do you know you need to do this blood work? But if you can orchestrate the journey, it says, okay, this person is gone 3 days without scheduling their appointment. Let's send them an email. Okay, 2 more days, we haven't done it. Let's send a text. All right, 2 more days. Let's have an agent actually call out to her and tell her and see what's happening. But if we say, Unique, she's a high value customer. She's somebody we really care about. This is really important to us, one of those high rollers. Then after 2 days without scheduling, let's reach out directly. Let's have somebody not wait for more time, but because this one's really important, let's have a person call out and make sure we get that taken care of. You can orchestrate the journey or set up rules. And we find this is starting to happen, seeing in banking, seeing in retail, other areas. And it is a customer experience person's best friend because you've moved away from talking about what could happen and about surveys to actually designing the journey and orchestrating it with software to make sure it really happens. It's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That makes sense because that takes care of the follow-up because that's what it needs. It needs a follow-up. It needs a reminder. and humans are falling short in it. So why not use automation to assist in the follow-up?
Exactly. And then schedule the person when it's necessary. Coming back to new agent comes on board.
Yes.
Let's make a phone call. Bring it back to the earlier conversation. You can use it as well to do both digital and analog.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. All right. Now, before we came on, we were talking a bit about internal customer experience journey mapping. As I was mentioning to you, I did training today and I had a client that asked that question. And I just wanted you to shed some light on, is that really done? Is that a practice that's completed? And if so, what would be your recommendations for them to approach an internal customer journey mapping experience? Is it similar to how you do the external?
It's absolutely a useful tool for this. You do it a little bit differently. Coming back to the first thing is we look at those 5 questions. Number 1 is, what's the business problem? The end-to-end customer journey can be narrow. Let's go back to Comcast. You really have 3 steps. You have purchasing, you have using, you have canceling. Some other pieces, that's a big part. That's a fairly simple experience. The employee experience is not. The employee experience is very complex. You have hiring somebody. You actually, for that, you have looking for candidates. You have hiring them. You have onboarding them. You have promotions. You have moves. You have changes in jobs. You have retirement. You have selecting benefits. All kinds of different journeys in there. If you try to do the whole thing, you're going to get a watered down mess. You want to go narrow. You want to look very specifically at some sort of problem we want to solve. And so let's say, for example, it is onboarding. If your research shows you that when employees start, they have a really hard time figuring out where things are, and they never really make a connection. And if they don't make a connection in the first 90 days, they're probably not going to be loyal. So you might want to look at, and I'm a big onboarding guy, so it's probably come across. So you want to look at the onboarding journey and go narrower. The next is who's the right customer? In this case, who's the right employee? And so you'll figure out, is it everybody? Is it a specific location? What are we going after? But it's question number 4 where you start to see more variance. How do I collect the voice of the employee? Because you have A, better access, but B, maybe some different privacy as well. We work with one client where video are not allowed. That was hard for us because everything we do is video-based. If you want to move the culture, video is a great way of doing it. Sometimes for employees, you can't do that. So you have to come up with other ways to get the feedback. But the good news is you often have better access. But mostly the same process works.
Okay. So that's good, because I think it's important to understand, as you said, a problem is happening in the organization. How can you better, let's say, for example, it is in a specific department that is impacting the external customer. How can they actually make modifications there, and what are the challenges that they're being faced with there? Because I guess just as how we're aiming for a seamless and an easy experience on the outside, employees want to have an easy and a seamless experience on the inside as well. It makes their job much easier. Yeah?
That it does, yes.
So you have to look at your systems and your processes, and maybe there's something that you could be doing that could be done better if you are just taking the time to look at what is being done. I think sometimes too in an organization, people get accustomed to doing things this way. Well, this is how we've been doing it for the last 5 years. That doesn't mean it can't change.
Right, very much.
So it's to get them to that mindset for sure. Okay, James,
can you share? Global research. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
We worked with a global research organization, was getting terrible feedback from their end customers about how hard they were to work with. But they discovered it was because their customer-facing people had a hard time working with their back-end people. Wow. Their finance group, their IT group there. So they did the employee journey mapping to understand what is the friction that was actually impacting their ability to serve customers. As a result, they reorganized the entire back-end system, IT, finance, you name it, to be able to react more quickly to the customer. It was a very exciting situation to be able to see how much we impacted not just our client, but also their end customers.
Right. And I'm sure in that case, the customers, the feedback that they gave in terms of what was happening now versus what was happening before, there was a very big difference because of the re-engineering that was done on the back end.
Bingo, exactly.
Nice. Okay, so we have a lot of persons who may view this particular video that we're doing, and some of them are business owners or they're senior leaders in an organization, and they may work in companies that have great products and services, but they lack the constantly motivated human capital. If you're sitting across the table from that person, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them to have a successful business and a naturally motivated team?
You need to bring the customer to life for your employees. We do a lot of video where we'll go out there. So first of all, once we can go to places again, get your employees out to your customer sites. Visiting a customer at his or her site will drive more change and empathy than any report. Second of all, when they do that, record the interviews and show that to your teams. Help build that empathy. It's really about understanding that customer is human. They have needs, desires, and there's a huge potential for your organization to help them. But you have to build that empathy, and video is an absolutely great way to do that.
All right. So when you say video, is it that you're recording the interaction that you had with the customer and then you bring that video back to your sales or marketing team and show them the interaction? And how exactly does that benefit them?
It helps them understand what the customers are trying to do. Helps them understand so when we do a report, we might show 20, 30, 40 videos. And understanding what are the customer's motivations, what are they trying to accomplish, and how you're getting in their way is really powerful. And that's really why we're in this business of customer experience, is to move the hearts and minds of our employees to better serve customers. The very best way is getting them to meet customers face to face. The second best way is through a video.
Gotcha. All right. So really being able to connect with the customer on a human level so people can be motivated. It's fascinating that we have to be doing so much work around customer experience when we as, like me as a customer experience practitioner, and you as a customer expert as well, that we are customers ourselves. And the people that work in these businesses, they are customers of other people's companies as well. So if we all play the role of a customer at some point in our lives, why is it so hard to get service delivery across? Because we should all be experts, I'm thinking, if we're all customers.
We're too much of experts. When I worked for a global health insurance organization, and I was amazed that literally nobody in marketing or product development in my division had ever met a client. Wow. And when I wanted to talk about that, they said, well, we're customers. We don't need to talk to customers. We're customers. Yeah, we're the most oddball customers in the world because we think about health insurance 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Nobody else does that. And so we knew too much. We were building the most complex products out there because that's what we wanted to buy because we knew so much.
Yes.
That beginner's mind is absolutely critical. You need to step back and look at it as if you didn't know so much. And that's really, really hard.
Yeah, that's a good point. So step back and look at it almost like you have nothing, you have no knowledge of the industry, you're at ground zero. What would you really want to happen if that was you coming into it for the very first time? Yeah, exactly. That's really good. Really good. That's like a BFO, like a blinding flash of the obvious.
I'm known for that. I don't know what that says, but yes.
All right, Jim. So we are basically at the end of our interview. I can't believe the time has passed so quickly. Can you share with our listeners where they can find you online? They want to connect with the heart of the customer. They want to know more about journey mapping. Share your book with us, please. I know you went and got a copy to show us. Tell us a little bit about it.
Got it here. Get there. How hard is to be a customer? Oops, that way. And as I mentioned, in case people have not gotten the idea that I'm a total geek, which I clearly am, there is my license plate, Journey Map. If you're up in Minnesota, you see Journey Mapping going by, well, you know what's up. Easiest place to find me is probably LinkedIn. You can find our organization at heartofthecustomer.com. But there's only 13 Jim Tinchers on LinkedIn, and it's pretty obvious which one's a Journey Mapping and customer experience geek. So Jim Tincher's there. And I'd love to connect with people after this viewing.
Excellent. Excellent. Could maybe just take a minute and share with us a little bit about what's in the book, what people can expect from the book, how it would help them. Is it geared towards people in a specific industry, or can anybody who is in any industry buy the book and really get great value out of it?
It's not industry specific. And in fact, the 3 case studies we walked through include YMCA, the Greater Twin Cities, a hospital, Meridian Health, now Hackensack Meridian Health in New Jersey, and then a business-to-business company who won't let us use their name, so they're ABC Software. So very different industries. The first third of the book covers the fact that, first of all, 2/3 of the time, as I mentioned, journey mapping fails to drive any change, and walks through those 5 questions and how you can use those to help target your efforts. Second third of the book talks about how to actually do the journey mapping work, how to involve customers. The third part then is how to drive action as a result. We'll introduce the ad car change model there. We'll talk about how to make the maps graphical, how to find those moments of truth. And so it really is, as mentioned beforehand, our goal was not to write a how-to book, but we're such geeks about this, it ended up being a how-to book. But along the way, we have through those 3 case studies, we also have a lot of customer interviews too. So I've been told by a lot of people that, my writing, but the stories they love. So
nice. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to hop on this Facebook CX series live with us tonight and share all of these wonderful nuggets and insights about the heart of the customer journey mapping, how important data is, what kind of data we should be focused on, how to collect the data, why it's important to ensure that you get the buy-in from your CFO in order to get your CEO on board, how to just step back and look at it like you're at ground zero to understand what your business is really trying to accomplish so you can make things as easy and as simple as possible for your customers, because that's what really converts into loyalty when you make things easy, and they're more likely to refer you if you make things very easy for them. It was really a great conversation.
Thank you. That was quite the summary. So yes, I really enjoyed it. So thanks, Unique.
You're welcome. So guys, until next time, we will see you. Have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.
Bye.